managers who are in charge of selling all those parts, they were my elements of the study. The units of the study: automotive component manufacturing organizations, OE suppliers listed in ACMA, Extent, automotive component manufacturing organization based in southern India. So we can see in India, in the northern region, there are 178 number of units, automotive component manufacturers. Western region, there are 138 manufacturers. Southern region, there are 108 manufacturers. I have taken in toto southern region. Eastern region, there are 22 manufacturers. So 25% of the total population I have taken for my research. And tools for collection of data is a structured questionnaire, which is, I have used a Likert scale, 1 to 5. 1 is strongly disagree, 5 is strongly agree. And variables and codes are as follows. In the 4 different variables, I have used these many number of items. I have not put the questionnaire here as such. And secondary data, I was depending upon all these various journals. This is the hypothesis H1, which explains long-term commitments is a function of all these perceived risks, focus on technology, investment actions, and focus on products. And my regression equation for H2 is purchase enhancements, again, are dependent upon all these variables: product benefits, service benefits, know-how benefits, time to market benefits, and economic benefits. Limitations is basically, this is a survey research which involves a lot of money and time, and non-response error is a basic limitation. Profile of the respondents. Final analysis was done from 64 completed questionnaires received from 64 marketing managers in 64 OE suppliers organizations. There was around 60% response was there. So this is in fact a breakup of the study. So now after running a regression equation to that particular variables and the data, this is the model that I have arrived at. Basically, initially I started with long-term commitments are dependent on 4 different variables: high perceived risk, focus on technology, investment actions, and focus on products. After running the regression equation, I found out that long-term commitments and productivity are dependent upon only high perceived risk and focus on technology. For the hypothesis H2, this is the model that I have derived at. Initially, there were 5 different variables connected to purchase enhancement and productivity. After running the equation, I found out that purchase enhancement and productivity is basically dependent upon service benefits and the know-how benefits which a OE supplier gives to a OEM. So the results of this hypothesis testing indicated for an automotive component manufacturer primarily interested in OE supplies to effectively formulate his relationship building activities, that is strategies, so that he can get long-term commitments from the customers. I think future research might build on this study to provide a more complete understanding, and eventually an integrated theory can be developed by this research. And a lot of suggestions, in fact, I have given. I think all these suggestions are there in the PPTs, which all of you can go through later, because there are a lot of suggestions. And basically the suggestions are depending upon my findings of the study. And the most important suggestion is basically a OE supplier has to give the pre-sale and post-sale services to the customer, which includes a lot of breakups, which I have mentioned here. I think you can go through the suggestions later, because I don't want to exceed the time with Mike already. Okay. So these are some of the suggestions what I have given. The OE supplier should interact with R&D executives from the beginning of the project, because basically all these are project-based items. It is not one-time selling items. What the transaction between a OE supplier and OEM is not a one-time transaction. It is a project-based transaction which will be over a period of time it will run. So the OE supplier should interact with the R&D executives from the beginning of the project. They should study the customer drawings, give possible suggestions as to how to develop the products. They should develop the prototypes as fast as possible and submit the same for testing. The supplier engineer should help in prototype testing at the customer premises. Any suggestions offered by the customer should be evaluated and the modified prototypes to be submitted within time schedules of the customer. This will go a long way in building long-term relationships. Further, the OE supplier should arrange a plant visit for the customer's R&D engineers and design department engineers. The capability of the supplier to manufacture according to the expectations of the customer is to be proved. When the trial orders are received from the OE supplier, the supplier should make all possible attempts to manufacture the order as per the time schedules of the customer. The supplier engineers should also interact with the end customers of the OEM in the field and try to identify the teething problems. This will help the supplier to redesign the product if any difficulties are observed in the field testing. So usually when the quote is submitted, it has to be very clear. It has to give you a lot of breakup as to how exactly the product is going to be manufactured and what are the kind of processes that are involved. All those things has to be given. Since the automotive component selling to OEMs is supposed to be a project selling, long-term interests are to be considered. The supplier should keep in mind the OE order, even though is taken at a lesser profit, the status of the supplier will go a long way in procuring orders from the replacement market. Once you are supplying to a OEM, your replacement market will grow enormously. So any OE supplier, he should not think on the replacement market, he has to think on the OE market first. If his product is there in the OEM, then naturally the consumers will purchase the same product. For example, I am the manufacturer of a battery and my battery is fitted in a car, correct? When it comes for the replacement, the customer will see which battery is there in the car and he will go and buy the same product. So you should see that you get an OEM order instead of concentrating on a replacement order. So I think these are some of the suggestions which runs through. And the scope for future research is, I have not examined other benefits such as learning about new technology, new markets, accelerating time to market for new products and all those things. I think there is a lot of scope for further research in these areas. Thank you. I think any questions is there? Yeah, please.
I was just wondering for your hypothesis too, how you came to select or how you came to use the independent variables. Did you choose them? Did you have more that you were working with that you narrowed down to that?
No, this model is basically derived from my research. Okay. I have the data and I ran a regression equation. Initially there were two models in fact. So one is a conceptual model initially. After doing the research, after running the regression equations, I changed the model. So that is why I had shown in different colors which are the variables which are significant and which are the variables which are insignificant, like that.
We have another question. Dr. Kapala, I want to ask, did you make the assumption that all of the relationships were linear?
Assumptions for?
In what you've shown, you've listed the variables, but it looked like all of the assumptions were...
No, these are not assumptions. These are based on the literature review.
But were all of the independent variables linear relationships? Is that what you looked at?
No, these are not assumptions. That's what I'm trying to tell. These are the variables which I selected through my literature review. And I had connected these independent variables with the dependent variables to test whether they are significant or not. Of course, hypothesis is an assumption, of course. Any hypothesis should be an assumption only.
The nature of the relationships between supplier and the manufacturer,
yes.
Are they literal or
linear?
Linear? Are they linear relationships? Is that in your mind?
I hope so. These are linear relationships.
Okay.
I think we've seen it.
Okay.
Okay, I think we leave it at that. But thank you for this.
Thank you.